Welcome to Marking the End Times. I'm Mark Hitchcock, and privileged to have you with us every week. Thank you so much for joining in with us in this ministry and taking time out of your busy schedules. I know everybody's busy, and I appreciate you taking time to watch this video. And I know many of you are subscribers at endtimes.com, but also you can be a subscriber on the YouTube channel. On my YouTube channel, where you can find these videos. So if you go do that, that would be a blessing and a help to us as well. Well, I want to talk to you about something that every one of you experienced this last week, and that is this National Emergency Alert Test. Been a lot on the internet about this, a lot of people talking about this. Again, it's something that every one of us experienced. And so I want to talk about that and how at the same time it's happening in the United States, it's also happening in Russia, which is really interesting timing. So I want to talk about that, but I want to go in a little bit into the subscriber only section, and we're going to answer some really good questions. A lot of questions about heaven and about the millennium. I want to answer a question about, how are we as believers going to be able to not have sorrow for all of eternity, knowing that people that we love are not there with us in heaven, but are in hell. It's a very, very sobering question. Another question about when we get to heaven, what age will we appear to be? Will those who get caught up to heaven as children, will they appear as children? What age will we be? Another question about where the marriage of the supper of the Lamb occurs. Is it in heaven or on earth? Will people during the millennium procreate? And if so, how will people come to faith in Christ? And then a final question is, in the ruling and reigning in the millennial kingdom and in the future, will women be second-class citizens to men? Or will they rule and reign the same way that men do? So some really good questions that we'll get to here in just a bit. But I want to talk about this National Emergency Alert Test that everybody received. Now, it was on Wednesday, October 4th, and it was going to be at 2:20 Eastern Daylight Time. Now, on my phone here, I'm in Central Daylight Time in Oklahoma, so I received it at 1:18 on my phone. And then we had a television on, and it came through on the television at 1:22. But this was a national emergency alert test that was on cell phones, wireless devices, radios, and TVs. It was done by FEMA and by the FCC. And so we all received that, this alarm that was blaring. And people are often are wondering a lot about this. What about these things? There's all kinds of conspiracy theories that are out there. A couple things about this, let me just say, is first of all, this is a standard test now. A law was passed in 2015 that this has to happen in the United States once every 3 years. So this was the third of these nationwide tests. So there's a law requiring this once every 3 years that it takes place. But if you're out on the internet, this triggered all kinds of conspiracy theories. Now, I'm not going to go into all of these, but I'm going to talk a little bit later about this and just say, we need to be warned not to buy into everything that we read out on here on the internet. People were saying that, this is 5G technology. A lot of people are worried about all this and saying that there's going to be all these 5G zombies out there because of this 5G technology. Others were saying that this is going to activate some nanoparticles in the bodies of those who received the COVID-19 vaccine. That something was placed inside of people during that vaccine, and that with this announcement that's going to go out, this alarm, this blaring alarm, that would activate something inside of people who took the vax. So they were saying this was going to trigger a kind of zombie apocalypse. And as far as I can tell, that's not happened. So we need to be warned and highlight the danger of people coming out and saying all kinds of unsubstantiated things just to get people to, click on their channels or whatever it may be. Now, a couple things I do want to say about this, though, that I think are significant. We've kind of gotten rid of some of the things that are kind of crazy out there. But a couple things that are significant about this, I think, is this is something that's going to happen in the United States every 3 years. And it just kind of pictures this idea. It's kind of a creepy kind of a thing, that everybody in the country is receiving the exact same thing at the same time. And someone I read this week put it like this. This is a really interesting thought about our world today. We live everywhere all at once. And that's really true in many ways. We live everywhere now, all at once. Something that's happening in any part of our country affects all of us all at once, and we all receive that. And so it just kind of cements this idea of a growing control over our lives in this country, of this information that can be disseminated in such a short period of time. But one thing I want to highlight about this that I do think is interesting is Newsweek has an article, a heading that says this: U.S. and Russia to hold nationwide emergency alert drills on the same day. So on October 4th, in Russia and in the United States, these emergency alert system announcements are going out. And I want to read something here, a couple things that I've run across on a couple different articles. One is from the Washington Post. Said sirens blare across Russia as it holds nationwide emergency drills. It says this: sirens wailed across Russia. Of course, it's 11 time zones, the largest country in the world. Sirens wailed across Russia, and TV stations interrupted regular programming to broadcast warnings Wednesday as part of sweeping drills intended to test the readiness of the country's emergency responders amid the fighting in Ukraine. Now, what's interesting, in Russia, they had this emergency alert that went out on Wednesday, October 4th, but the day before, on October 3rd, they had emergency drills throughout the country. They kind of simulated a nuclear attack where about 70% of the housing in Russia would be destroyed, and you had people going to certain places and going to different shelters. And so they're taking this very seriously. But the Washington Post article goes on to say this: the exercise that started Tuesday follows Ukrainian drone attacks on Moscow and other cities. As the readiness drill went on, the Russian Defense Ministry said air defense has shot down 31 Ukrainian drones over border regions early Wednesday. As part of the drills, TV stations broadcast a notice saying, "Attention everyone, the readiness of the public warning system is being tested. Please remain calm." Russia media said the exercise's scenario mentions the increasing danger of a conflict between nuclear powers and simulates a response to a situation in which 70% of housing and all vital infrastructure have been destroyed, wide areas contaminated by radioactive fallout, and a general mobilization announced. So Russia is having all these drills that are taking place because of their fear of a thermonuclear exchange. Now, what's interesting in light of that as well is an article came out this week in the New York Times. Russia may be planning to test a nuclear-powered missile. And the subheading says, visual evidence from a remote base in the Arctic shows launch preparations mirroring those that preceded earlier tests. And if you look in the New York Times, they have several different images here that show launch pad activity again. And they've actually have these in the publications that you can find online. But the article says that satellite imagery and aviation data suggest that Russia may be preparing to test an experimental nuclear-powered cruise missile, or may have recently tested one with a theoretical range of 14,000 miles. And so with Russia trying to operate these missile tests, they may be afraid of some kind of retaliation. And so Russia right now is on high alert. And to me, it just seems interesting. I can't see it as a coincidence that Russia has these nuclear drills on October 3rd. The U.S. has the National Emergency Alert Test on October 4th, and Russia has the same type of emergency alert test on the very same day. Now, I don't know what's happening. I don't have any big inside information, but I find it fascinating that both of these two superpowers, the two nations with the most nuclear weapons, are having these drills on the same day. One other thing that I found on the internet that I think is fascinating came out just this week. There's an article that says, Putin is urged to test an atomic bomb. A lot of you may know that Russia has been very active up in the Arctic region, taking and securing a lot more territory in the Arctic. And it says Russian rescue workers practice evacuating citizens as nuclear expert urges show of force. And here's what this article says. Russia is reportedly holding nationwide drills today, and this was on that Tuesday, to practice evacuating civilians in the event of a nuclear conflict. Leaked documents published said a Russian media outlet with links to Vladimir Putin's security services indicated the extensive nature of Tuesday's tests. They evacuated large numbers of people from hypothetical radiation zones. It says, while Russia holds civil defense drills annually, this will be the first time they've happened on such a large scale. The test will assume the nation's at least partially under martial law. And then it goes on down to say this, the drills come as the head of a Kremlin-backed nuclear research center called on Russia to test an atomic bomb to intimidate the West. So all of these things are happening here at the same time, and I don't think that it's a coincidence. So say, well, how do we respond to these things that are happening? Well, let me just give a couple of thoughts. One is, as I said earlier, we're seeing this technology that is able to warn every person in the nation simultaneously of an event. I think probably there seems to be movement afoot to have some kind of a global testing system. You can give everybody on the earth the same type of announcement or same type of warning at the same moment of time. So it just shows that the increasing globalism that we see in our world today and the greater and greater control that governments and those in power can exert over people's lives. As I said earlier as well, I think this highlights the need for us to have discernment. When things like this are coming, there's all kinds of things that get out on the internet and cause all kinds of reckless speculation and rampant fear. And I understand that today because there's so much fear and there's a lot of distrust of government and a lot of suspicion, but we have to pray and seek the Lord and have discernment when these kinds of reckless speculations run wild. And the other thing I would say is, the final thing is this. I thought it was fascinating. As I researched this online, over and over again, there were statements on there about this emergency alert test that was coming, and they would say, don't be alarmed. Don't be alarmed. And I thought, that's pretty good advice for us as believers in these times in which we live. Don't be alarmed. We need to be aware. We need to be alert. What did Jesus say in John 14? Don't let your heart be troubled. Don't let it be stirred up. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many dwelling places. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go and prepare a place for you. If I go and prepare a place for you, I'll come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Interestingly as well, the Russian publication or the Russian announcements that went out, what did they say? Attention everyone, remain calm. And I think that's God's message to us in these times in which we live. Attention everyone, remain calm. And you and I find that calm and that peace in knowing that God is sovereign, that God has a plan, and that He's working that out, and that one of these days the rapture is going to come, and that's our hope in this troubled world. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. If you're a subscriber, we're going to go in just a moment into this Q&A session, subscriber-only section. If you're not a subscriber, you'd like to be one, you can go to endtimes.com and sign up there for just $7 a month. And we're going to answer these questions about sorrow in heaven, about where the marriage supper of the Lamb occurs. Will people be saved and procreate during the millennium? When we get to heaven, what age will we appear to be? And where does the marriage supper of the Lamb occur? Is it on heaven or on earth? So we'll go in now to the Q&A section and answer these great questions.